I'm loving articles such as this. And the only reason why they exist is because of people like myself. I will admit it. Pat on the back. No, but really, in reality though, libertarians, anarchists, volunteers, critical thinkers, people who aren't subjugated to the state, to the ideologies that are propagated by the state, by those the sociopaths and control freaks that maintain this system of governance, this forced subjugation, this modern day slavery. I'm seeing though that if you go all the way back, now it's been even before then, but since I've been paying attention personally, looking at the big picture, right? Basically, you might as well go back to about 2008 or in around there. But since then, I'm seeing that people like myself, like I said, the type of people that espouse proper philosophical principles regarding liberty. I love the fact that nowadays, what was that? First they fight you, blah, blah, blah. But I'm seeing now that there's quite a few people in the establishment media that are even trying to hedge their bets, right? So they still kind of want to, I don't want to go anti-state. I still want the statists to carry me in their favor somewhat, but I'm willing to speak up a little bit, right? And that's what the establishment media are trying to do today, because they recognize and realize that when they look out on the landscape, is the bulk of the masses are tired of the fucking bullshit propaganda that they're constantly espousing and putting forth. So they're like, social media and people, even someone like myself. Now my page, I get it, it's quite small, and I don't know why, but whatever. But people that are apparently a lot better at doing what I do, your Stefan Molyneux, your Larkin Rose, your Free Thought Project, those behind that. I could go into, Dan Dix in Canada, Josh Sigurdsson. There's lots of different people that I'm seeing that have a lot more reach and a bigger audience than I do. But what I understand instinctively is, even though I might not have as big as audience, I was pointing out and propagating the kind of message regarding liberty that these folks are now just starting to jump on board with, right? And I don't care. At least I know that I was one of the early adopters or people that were promoting proper liberty. But either way, I don't give a shit. It's never about me. It's not about me. This whole endeavor, this whole thing of promoting liberty is never about a person. It's about liberty. It's never about a personality, because that's what statism, that's what forced subjugation, that's what collectivism, look at this political master, he'll do it for us, right? How many times is that fucking, I don't care. That's why I love the fact when politicians or political pundits say, oh, look, all these, basically when they're referring to liberty lovers, look, it's in massive disarray. They disagree with each other all the time. That's a good thing. That tells me that we're willing to listen to each other's ideas, right? And we're also, not only are we willing to listen to each other's ideas, preferences, or ideologies, but we're saying that I may disagree with you, but I would never force my preference or ideology on you, and you're saying the same thing towards me, which is why I love these people. Even if you're a socialist, even if you're a communist, I'll point out the blatant hypocrisies and discrepancies and abstract premises that will prove that will never function. Probably, but either way, if you're willing to live and let live, and that's how I function in my life, do your thing. I had a conversation earlier with someone that was trying to promote some kind of socialism once again. It's like, well, listen, or community. Instead of state socialism, he was referring to community-based socialism. And it's like, well, listen, as long as you don't force it on someone else, then you do your thing. What do I care? As long as you don't have any power or ability to use forced subjugation or the mysticism of government to force your ideologies or preference on me, do your thing. In the free market of ideas, that's how we figure out what's going to be the best, right? That's how you figure out what's best for us, is allow the free market of ideas to flourish, and whatever works best for each individual one among us, because we are all individuals, we are not a collective, we are not the board. Whatever works out best for us, then you go that route. As long as nobody forces their ideology, ideas, preferences, or opinions on each other, or economic, fundamentals, do your thing. Do your thing. And in the free market of ideas, those who like one certain thing can gravitate to the type of people or geographical area that promote that, and those that don't go to a different. That's fine. There's not a thing wrong with it. And people talk about segregation. Oh, that's segregation. Well, listen, we're not, like I say, we're not autonomous robots. We're autonomous human beings. We're not a collective of robots or the Borg. So we have to. That's always going to remain a function of human cohabitation and coexistence. Is we have to be willing to live and let live. That's the most beneficial aspect of freedom, is learning to live and let live. And it benefits everyone. Even the control freaks and sociopaths benefit from that. They just don't want to continue. Their problem is they don't want to hold up the mirror and deflect that and allow freedom for everyone else. They want to take it all and absorb that, and no, it's all mine, right? Talk about greedy. Collectivists are the greediest fucks you'll ever meet. Anyways, headline article: Ottawa piles on debts while making it harder for your household to borrow. So, governments, what is government? What are these fucks? Who are these people that get to spend on your behalf or borrow on your behalf? I mean, think about that even as a base premise. Massive fail, right? But let's get into the article. Ottawa recently announced a series of new regulations for the housing market to protect the long-term financial security of borrowers and all Canadians. You have to love the irony. While the federal government increases regulation on household debt, it racks up more of its own debt with no end in sight. I mean, how true is that, right? Among the new regulations, the federal government will mandate a stress test that will require all home buyers taking out insured mortgages with less than 20% down payment, to qualify for a loan at the Bank of Canada's benchmark 5-year fixed mortgage rate of 4.64%, which is significantly higher than mortgage rates 2 to 3% typically offered to actual home buyers. So it's all just, I don't even want to get into it because it'll mess up this whole thing I'm trying to do here, but look at my past videos if you want to learn anything more about the whole housing market, central planning, central banks, and how all that shit plays out. Anyways, what are we to make of this new rule? For one thing, it suggests Ottawa thinks Canadians are poorly managing their debts and that financial institutions are improperly screening mortgage applicants. That's a bit rich, given that the federal government is not exactly a model of rectitude when it comes to fiscal management. I mean, think about that, right? Governments spend way more. The debt's like, holy shit. At least a personal debt is like a person, it's taken upon themselves, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be ultimately responsible for it. Governments get to assume and accumulate debts on the behalf of Canadians. Provincial, they get to double and triple debt. When it comes to local, provincial, and federal, they're triple dipping on the people, because the people of Canada, whether it's local, provincial, or federal debts, there's still only going to be one lowly consumer, one lowly tax slave, right? There's not three of me, there's only one of me. For example, the federal government has piled on $162 billion in new debt since 2007-2008, for a total of $619 billion. Just like households, the federal government pays interest on debts, which cost $26 billion each year. $26 billion each year just in interest. Holy shit. That's close to what Ottawa collects from the GST. So federally, from all provinces in the entire country, they collect $33 billion, and yet just the interest on the debt is $26 billion. Let that sink in. Now, run it through your mind. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times if you have to, until it starts to sink in what those numbers truly represent. And over the next 5 years, the federal government will add at least another $113 billion in new debt with no plan for a balanced budget. We say at least because a recent Fraser Institute study found that new debt over the next 5 years could total up to $200 billion under more realistic spending scenarios. And a new TD Bank report released Thursday pegs the 5-year cumulative deficit at $17 billion, more than was forecast in the government's March budget. I mean, holy fuck. I mean, $1 billion is 1,000 millions, right? $1,000 million bills, or 1,000 millionaires. That's what it takes to create a billion. But they're talking about 17 billion. So 17 million. 17,000 million. These numbers are becoming mind-boggling. I wonder, and it starts to make you think what it was like at the very early stages of the hyperinflation aspects in old world Europe, or places like fucking some of these third world developed countries that have gone through this shit. It's like, holy fuck. Critically, very little in the debt finance spending is being used to invest in growth enhancing infrastructure. Instead, much of the debt is being used to finance increased spending on current government operations and transfers. In fact, just $4 billion of the $29.4 billion projected deficit this year is for spending on new infrastructure. So, I mean, like a very small percentage of the money that these fuckers are printing and borrowing is going to anything that's even going to have any real positive effect for the Canadian, the typical Canadian. And even with the one that they're affecting that might seem beneficial, it's just taken from future and given to you now, right? So it's not like the government doesn't have no magical ability to increase productivity or prosperity. All they can do is depreciate or devalue the currency to kind of give that illusion, right? To put that in family finance terms, the government is racking up credit card debt to buy consumer goods rather than borrowing to invest in hard assets such as a new home. Meanwhile, Canadian families are generally accumulating debt responsibly and for much better reasons. Okay, that's bullshit. But anyways, as Philip Cross, the former chief economic analyst at Statistics Canada, concluded in a Fraser Institute analysis last year, overall there is little evidence that Canadian households, unlike some governments, are being irresponsible and taking on new debt. The long-term increase in household debt has been leveraged into a much larger gain in household assets, boosting both income and net worth. But see, that's once again more bullshit, because what they're trying to say is because the speculative value or the worth of their house or the assets that they have accumulated over the years is higher than their net worth. Well, if they're still in the black, right? Which is bullshit, because once those valuations of those speculative assets, or once the speculative value of those tangible assets are proven to be in line with real world historical norms, is people will come to realize that, yeah, that was bullshit. They didn't have no equity built up, because the equity is based on bullshit speculative overinflated valuations. And that's usually a direct result of central planning and central banks. So no, people don't, just because you think your house is worth $1 million, and there are idiots right now that are willing to pay that because of this bullshit market manipulation, doesn't mean that your house is worth $1 million. Like I've said in past videos, look at some of the houses and the way they're being built. Even though they might have greater living spaces and areas, right, as far as cubic or square footage, the material they use is vastly inferior to what was used in the past. So these houses, they look good, right? Just like a lot of the cars. They look good in new form, but they won't last nearly as long or hold up and retain their value as the old products used to, or the old houses or the old cars. This is just the reality that you're living in. But they want to keep propagating this bullshit because through fractional reserve banking and the current monetary system, they always have to keep that inflation. They always have to keep the game. The Ponzi game has to continue to grow for it to remain relevant, to sustain itself. Once that starts collapsing, then it's just like a bubble when you prick it. It's going to cease to exist, right? And what's left after that is just a whole lot of cleanup and a whole lot of mess. I'll put a copy to this article at the bottom in the description of this video if you want to continue read it. It's a fairly long one. I think there's probably a good 4, 5, 6 paragraphs left, but I think I cover the most important fundamental aspects of it. And like I say, to me, it's not like I shouldn't have to tell everybody about everything that's within this article. To me, the most important thing I can do is just kind of help lead people to information, and you take it upon it and you come up with your own. Read the information and you come up and form your own opinions or ideas regarding the information that you read. I shouldn't be the one that's forcing you to believe whatever I believe. I shouldn't be the one that's trying to propagate my way of thinking. I'll give you my evidence, my information, but I expect you to do the work yourself and learn these things so that you don't feel that you're being subjected to the opinions or the whims of others, right? That's the most important thing that I think I can do, is I can just kind of help point you in the right direction, but I'm never going to use force. I'm never going to use mysticism, coercion, or deception to get you to fall in line or believe what I believe. Do your thing. If you still disagree with what I got to say, comment in the bottom of the video, and we'll hammer that stuff out. But at least put some kind of effort into it. At least, get yourself, build up your ammo, right? Chalk your mind up. Get some information so that you can at least rebut anything I got to say if you disagree with it. Don't just give me mindless bullshit or, bullshit rhetoric that you've heard by some central plan or control freak or propaganda publication. Read it, absorb it. Take the time out to think about it critically, and then get back to me about what you think about the kind of information I'm providing, the narrative that I'm putting forth. That's how we best educate and inform each other, is hammering this kind of stuff out. We have to raise and elevate each other instead of continuing on this race to the bottom. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.